In the distant past, men of old spoke under the anointing of the Spirit of God. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, but the end is not yet. There will be great signs in the heavens and on the earth, and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them by that which is coming, for the powers of heaven will be shaken. But know this, that in the last days, perilous times will come. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? World in Focus.
Hello, good evening. It is World in Focus, and I'm going to say this. I hadn't prepared to read this scripture, but I feel led to do it, and so I'm going to do it in a second or two. But I want to say, first of all, a big thank you to my wife who has joined me this evening. She's going to be answering your emails and texts and things.
I'm going to be reading them out. I'm not going to be answering them. Derek Walker's going to be doing that.
Very well said. Yeah, Pastor Derek Walker will be joining us, so have all your questions ready, and Leslie will very kindly hand them on. But let me just start with the scripture. I literally sat down and I thought, oh no, don't give me a scripture, Lord. Anyway, here it is. It's from 1 Peter chapter 4, and it starts off by saying, therefore, since Christ has suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves also with the same purpose, because he who has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin, so as to live the rest of the time in the flesh, no longer for the lusts of men, but for the will of God. For the time already is past, sufficient for you and me to have carried out the desires of the Gentiles, having pursued a course of sensuality, lust, drunkenness, carousing, drinking parties, and the abominable idolatries. And I'm sure many of you will remember those days. In all of this, they are surprised that you do not run with them in the same excesses of the dissipation that they malign you. You know, when we become a Christian, you know, it's not a work that happens for most people anyway overnight. It happens gradually. And when you've been mixing with the people that you have in the world, your friends, and you've been out there, you're partying, you're doing all the things that the world does, because it is actually without any accountability to any order, for example, of God's particular ways or his particular things that he would ask us to be on top of. But our friends tend to malign us once we start to make changes. We start not to do the things that we used to do, hopefully. Anyway, it says, in all this, they are surprised that you do not run with them in the same excesses, and they start to malign you. They start to slag you off, to use a modern day vernacular. But they will give account, God says, to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For the gospel has for this purpose been preached, even to those who are dead, that though they are judged in the flesh as men, they may live in the spirit according to the will of God. Now, nearly finished, hang in there. The end of all things is near. Therefore be of sound judgment and sober spirit for the purpose of prayer. And above all, keep fervent in your love for one another. I like this, because love, we've heard this before in Corinthians, covers a multitude of sins. You know, so just something to start with. And I think, you know, I didn't need anything that heavy, Lord. But anyway, I've delivered it. And I'm sure many of you, and including myself, will relate quite well to all of that. But we thank God we have a Redeemer in Jesus Christ. Now, we will be inviting Pastor Derek Walker in a few minutes. He's in lockdown like the rest of us. And we're going to unlock him because he's going to be on our video link. But I want to say that you know, I was talking about it this morning, Leslie, that there's lots of songs and things that I did many years ago which never got finished. And there's one particular song that I literally, this is still a work in progress, but it's pretty pretty nearly finished. And it's by, well, I wrote it along with somebody else in America, and I can't find the guy at the moment, but we did quite a number on this, and there's a lady from church that actually sang this, very powerful voice. Some say she sounds like Kate Bush, but let's have a listen. This is called I Will Be With Him. But think about, because I put the lyrics on there for very clear, because it is all about the time when we are caught away, however you want to interpret that. Have a listen to this.
Jesus comes around, and I can see him standing there, and I can see the tables turn, and I can feel his vision burn, and then he says, come to me and learn, oh, what I'm all about. Will you hear the voice that's calling when you see it's the
I will be with him. Do you know what's amazing is listening to the words again. I'm reminded that the scripture that I read at the beginning, which I was led to do, actually fits very well. You know, that when we burn in our desires, this is where we mess up. And as the song was saying, really, that we need to remove ourselves from that. And she says in the lyrics there that she won't hear a sinner cry when she is with the Lord, because all of the redeemed will be there, and those who have sins have been forgiven. An amazing opportunity to come right, get your life right with God in these days particularly. So I just wanted to mention that. God knows what he's doing, and that's why he interrupts sometimes and puts out what he wants out. Anyway, Leslie, I believe we do have Pastor Derek Walker on the line. And you've got emails coming in with questions. Let me welcome Pastor Derek Walker from Oxford Bible Church. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Howard. Leslie, good to see you.
Good evening, Derek. Nice to see you on screen. How are you doing? How are you managing through lockdown?
Yeah, we're doing all right. Praise God.
Is Hillary good?
Staying.
Is Hillary okay as well? Your wife, your dear wife?
She's very well.
Great.
Looking after me, and yeah, we're well in ourselves. Thank you.
Well done. Anyway, so what we're going to do is go straight into it, because we've got these particular emails that we can start off with, and we're obviously asking our viewers to write in, because we've got you for as long as it takes tonight, as it might even be an hour. Let's have a look.
Okay, Derek. It says here, when we come back with Jesus to rule the world and with new bodies, will we look like angels, says Dory?
Not specifically, no. I was asked this question the other day, will we have wings, you know, will that help us fly? But no, we will look like ourselves, but just a glorified version of ourselves. So, yeah, we don't turn into angels, but we will be glorious like angels. But ultimately, mankind is destined to be a higher nature than angels.
That's
because
correct.
We're made in the image of God.
Yes, in fact,
we'll
angels are servants.
Even more glorious.
Yeah, in that sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll be more glorious than angels, but we will not be angels, obviously.
Okay, I've got one here. I am intrigued by Luke 21:36 at the moment, which I read over the weekend. In this chapter, Jesus speaks of the tribulation to come, but in this particular verse, he says, pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen. Is the word escape here a reference to the rapture? If so, would this not also suggest a pre-tribulation rapture, says Satinder?
People are talking a lot more about the rapture nowadays. I've noticed that. Yes, well, I believe so. I believe this is a very plain statement. You know, often you hear people say, well, there's no plain statements. It's just inference. But I can see at least 3 plain statements of the rapture, and this is one of them. Let me just read it. In fact, if you read it in the context, it talks about, in verse 34, take heed lest that day, which is the day of the Lord, come on you unexpectedly, for it will come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. So, in other words, it's like a snare. It will suddenly start, and it will affect everyone on the face of the earth. And then it says, watch therefore, pray that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass. Well, if all these things come to pass, and it's all the things of the tribulation, if they all come to pass and they affect everyone on the face of the earth, then the only way to escape all these things is to leave the earth. In other words, the only possible escape is by the rapture, because there isn't a place on earth where you can escape to get away from the effect of these things. That's what it's saying. And to confirm that, it says that those who escape stand before the Son of Man. So it says you escape all these things that will come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. So in other words, that's a very clear reference in my mind to the rapture. We will escape in the rapture, and we will then be standing before the judgment seat of Christ, and that's when we will be judged and rewarded for our works, for our faithfulness to Christ. So, yeah, I do believe that's one of the plain statements of the pre-trib rapture.
I have to disagree, but that's okay. It's not my show, but I just want to, because I'm coming out of the woodwork, Derek. I'm sure you've probably heard a few weeks now.
I know.
But I'm not. We're not here to have a debate on it. It's just something.
No,
I
mean,
have to say.
I've never heard another explanation of that makes sense, but maybe there is one somewhere.
No, the great thing is, Derek, that even like the song was that I did 32 years ago was all about being caught away anyway and being with the Lord. But it just doesn't. For me, it's not totally clear that it's pre-trib that we will be going up, but certainly mid-trib at the very least. Yeah, but anyway, just wanted to say that.
But can I just say that why I said that was specifically a pre-trib verse is it says all these things. It doesn't just talk about some of these things. It says all these things that will come to pass. Starting with the context of that is of the Olivet Discourse is it describes the things that happen from the start of the birth pains, the beginning of birth pains.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll let that one go.
Right.
Okay, Marion says, good evening and God bless you. Off topic a bit, she says, but who do you think the two witnesses mentioned in the Bible could be?
Well, I'm pretty convinced that they're Moses and Elijah. I think it's clear that they're very special. The reason it's very clear that one of them is Elijah, not only from the miracles that they do, but because there's an actual prophecy. In fact, one of the last prophecies in Malachi is that God would send Elijah before the great and awesome day of the Lord. So there's a prophecy of Elijah coming. And although John the Baptist fulfilled some aspects of Elijah, it's clear that John the Baptist himself said, I am not Elijah. And Jesus said, there is a coming fulfillment of the Elijah prophecy. Jesus definitely said that. So one of them has got to be Elijah. I believe that the reason why Moses and Elijah, the other one is Moses, although it's not so obvious.
Because of the transfiguration.
Yes, that's the main reason. And also, if you look at the miracles they do, all the special miracles are either Moses-type miracles or like turning water to blood, or Elijah-type miracles like calling down fire from heaven. So there's a hint in the miracles they do. Now, at the transfiguration, they appear with Jesus, and I believe they continued, although invisible most of the time, but they appeared in spirit form. They were seen, and they were literally witnesses of the last days, at least, of Jesus' ministry. So they were there at the transfiguration. I believe they were there all the way through. They would have witnessed Jesus' death and resurrection, and they were there. And the Bible points to them again being present at the ascension. Do you remember it? 2 men, it says. 2 men at the ascension said, you see the way Jesus went, he'll come back in the same way.
Yeah.
And then these mysterious men disappear. That's Moses and Elijah, okay? And they were literally witnesses. So when they will be preaching in the temple, in the tribulation, they will literally be giving eyewitness testimony that Jesus is the Messiah. He died, he rose again, he ascended to heaven, and he's coming back soon.
Okay.
Very good answer.
Derek, when we go to heaven to be with our loved ones, our mother and father, etc., will we know them as our mother and father when we're in heaven? It says, or like angels, in other words, like ourselves, glorious bodies, but not as parents.
Well, we will know them, obviously, that they were our mother and father. That fact won't cease to exist.
Okay.
But we won't be, it's like Jesus said, there won't be anyone married in heaven, all right? So, in other words, you'll know that, you'll still know that Howard was your husband, but you won't be.
Sorry for you, darling.
I don't think you'll be related to each other as husband and wife. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Was that a big shout
So
of joy there?
it's difficult, but
Yeah.
it's not like we will forget the past.
Right.
We are who we are, and our past forms us, and that reality continues. But
Yeah.
no, I don't think we will, all live together necessarily in, a particular family in one particular mansion, for instance.
Okay.
Who knows? We just don't know, do we?
Yeah. I think what gives me a clue is when Jesus walked into the room and the disciples didn't recognize him after the post-resurrection. And so I'm thinking that, the character that we have and the personality that we have will be the thing in which we can recognize. Because it wasn't until he broke the bread and it was the way he did it that they suddenly realized, the disciples, who he was and that he was resurrected. So I'm thinking, as it's a new body we're going to get, thank God, so that we actually, the personality of the being, the person that was, will be recognizable, hopefully, something like that.
But we'll all be in our resurrection bodies. So that means there will be, any veil of misunderstanding will be removed. So we will know each other perfectly. There's total transparency in heaven.
Yeah.
So no shadows. So we will know exactly who everyone is. You'll recognize Abraham. You'll, not just your own family members. You'll know everyone because you will have, as it were, unclouded knowledge. But whether the relationships we have in this life will continue into heaven, that's almost impossible to answer. Because
they'll all be good friends.
They'll be transformed. Put it that way. They'll be transformed.
There you go.
Okay, in Revelation 13, it describes a beast with 10 horns and 7 heads, and on each head there was a blasphemous name, and a dragon gave the beast its power. What is the beast, and what does this passage mean? Says Andy.
You got all night.
I see we're doing the simple questions tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, of course, you see beasts in Daniel, Daniel 7 in particular, where they actually, the beasts represents the political empire, but behind it, it's a beast because that describes its nature, and ultimately, these are different political empires, and the focus in Daniel is on the times of the Gentiles. So it's the political empires that have dominated Israel over the time, because the Bible is Israel-centric. Now, the one with 7 heads is one mega beast. So Daniel shows individual beasts, okay, as if they were separate beasts. But in Revelation, the one with 7 heads actually is the mega beast, where you see one head appear at a time coming out the water. And so they are the empires, the 7 empires that have dominated Israel, starting with Egypt, and then Assyria, and then Babylon, and then Persia, and then Greece, and then Rome. And then the 7th head is, so each head, as it were, comes above the water and comes down again. And the 7th head is the one that we're interested in. It's the 7th empire. And on that 7th head, there are 10 crowns, because it says the final form of this 7th empire. Some people believe it's revived Rome, revived Roman Empire. There's another theory out there that it's the Islamic Caliphate, a revived Islamic Caliphate. But whatever it is, it's going to be the final form of the world power that Antichrist takes control of. And the final form will have 10 kings. So that's why the 7th head has 10 crowns on it. And those are the 7 kings that rule under the Antichrist. And it describes how in Revelation 13:17, how the Revelation chapter 17, how the Antichrist eventually takes power over those 10 kings and sets up his world power. So basically, it says that this beast is controlled by the dragon, by the devil. And in Revelation 12, I think he's described as having the 7 heads as well. So the Bible's telling us that this beast, if you like, is controlled by, is the political power. And in Revelation 17, the focus is on the woman who sits on the beast, which is the state religion, or the religion that sits upon the political power, that is often the cause of the death of the saints. So it's quite a tricky one. I've written on it. If you don't mind me throwing this book your way, if you want to know more about it, Panorama of Prophecy, I go into all the beasts. If you're interested in beasts, it's all in here. You can get it on Amazon, Panorama of Prophecy.
Brilliant.
Very good, Derek.
Okay, and we've got your website just come up on the screen. People will be able to go to your website, yeah?
And
yes, they can also order it from the website. And all of that stuff is also in my commentary on the book of Revelation.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, Derek.
And that last beast, Derek, that's the one that introduces the mark as well, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. So
at mid-tribulation, the Antichrist rises to world power with the help of the false prophet, and they set up the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Which we're heading for.
And they, for a short time, they achieve world domination.
And there is a lot of concern out there amongst so many people at the moment regarding the mark of the beast. And I've actually, in my very next email refers to it. My question is, we are saved through believing in the Lord Jesus Christ. If we take the mark of the beast, does that mean we will lose our salvation?
Well, the Bible is clear that if you take the mark of the beast, the warning is very strong in Revelation 14 that you are heading for hell. You know, it's a one-way ticket to hell. I believe a true believer would not take it because they would know what it is. I think I said before that it's not the kind of thing you're going to get accidentally through trickery. It's something whereby you will have to disown Christ and God, and you will have to swear your allegiance and your worship to the beast, to the Antichrist. And then you will receive the mark, which will enable you to participate in the economy. Only true believers will have the faith and the courage to resist that. Well, but I believe a true believer would not do that. If he does, he will renounce his faith, and he'll renounce Christ, and then he will lose his salvation, yes.
One of the things that's certainly doing the rounds at the moment is that this vaccine that is so sought after at the moment, if it becomes compulsory, people are worried that that is the mark of the beast and they'll be forced to be vaccinated. What do you think?
I disagree with that theory. It's a bit of a conspiracy theory. I think that definitely what's happening now is preparing the way for the mark of the beast. I don't think, praise God, that society is quite at that place where what the Bible describes as the mark of the beast, which, as I say, is all connected together with the worship of the Antichrist. I don't think that we're at that place where we'll be forced to take a vaccination, for example. We haven't quite got there yet. But you can see how it could happen. We're getting closer to that time. Certainly, it wouldn't be the mark of the beast if it's just a little chip in a vaccine. That isn't the mark of the beast. And if somebody, I don't recommend getting chipped. You know, I don't think I would do it myself. But even if you were chipped, that doesn't make it the mark of the beast. It's all connected with signing up to allegiance. It's worship. If you notice, every time the mark of the beast is mentioned, connected with it is the worship of the image of the beast.
Yes.
So you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Christians just get scared every time, you know, a vaccine will come up. You know what I mean? So sometimes these theories create fear when, you know, it is useful to understand these things so that we can see how it's things are moving in that direction. But I don't think we're quite there yet, thank God.
Derek, I'd like you to help define what a conspiracy theory is, because I had a little discussion today with somebody, you know, quite close to us, and saying that, that we've sort of abandoned certain beliefs and and things with regards to some of the things that I don't want to give everything away here, but I'll try and be careful. But the thing is, I said, look, that's a conspiracy theory, what you're talking about. We can't just broadcast conspiracy theories. We've got to stick to what the Bible is, and if we don't understand the Bible, we don't invent something, or we don't bring along somebody's theory and try to attach that to the scriptures. You know, so how would you define what a conspiracy theory is?
There is an interesting verse, let me just bring to your attention. You know, I'm not saying conspiracies don't happen, but we should be careful not to just rush, because there's something titillating about a conspiracy theory. And really, any one of us can come up with one. All you have to do is be a little bit clever and connect together, you know, isolated facts. And you can create a kind of reasonable story that kind of explains those facts. And
Yes.
just because somebody can do that does not make it true, you know. But Isaiah warns us about conspiracies in verse Isaiah 8:12. He says, "Do not say a conspiracy concerning all that this people call a conspiracy, nor be afraid of their threats, nor be troubled." And so the Lord is kind of saying there, you know, that people can get into a conspiracy mode, and God says, you know, don't be quick to jump to that, you know. And you know, in the end, we need to keep our eyes focused on the Lord and on the Word. And it is possible to get so caught up in conspiracy land that we lose our focus, you know, because in the end, you know, what God expects of us is not that we understand all the nefarious goings-ons, but that we actually are true to God and doing His will in the earth, you know.
Very good.
And God, if God needs us to understand some thing going on in the darkness, He'll reveal it to us. But I don't think we should go around searching for all possible conspiracies.
Thank you.
I think some people, the more titillatating it is, the more likely they'll believe it.
Yeah,
But,
very good. Well, in fact, I'm glad you brought that scripture up, because I didn't know that was there. And that was Isaiah chapter 8, the verses from 11, and in particular 12, mentions the word conspiracy. You're not to say it's a conspiracy. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Glad I asked the question.
Okay, it says, "Good evening, Pastor Derek. I have a view that may not be popular. I believe it's wrong for our public church services to be banned. And where I live in Ireland, we've just been handed our 4th and longest extension of churches closed until July, with no guarantee that this won't be extended again. Am I wrong to disagree with other Christians who tell me I need to be obedient to my government leaders, even when they have, as they do, an unbiblical agenda? What about obedience to and faith in God? I should mention that the government are quite okay with off-licences and golf courses being open, as they are considered essential."
Yeah, that's a funny one. You know, that is a hard one, because I found myself in that dilemma as a pastor. And I think, on the one hand, you do have, obviously, the scripture is clear that we are to obey the governing authorities, you know, unless it's in direct contradiction to what God commands. And in the time before the actual lockdown, the government advised there shouldn't be assemblies, and most of the churches that I knew of, you know, did not meet. And we actually got to meet one more Sunday than most churches. I just felt in my heart I wanted to honor God, because although the advice was against it, it just felt right that also God commands us to not forsake the gathering of ourselves together. And so we did it with social distancing, and where we met, you know, we did a proper health and safety type thing.
Sure.
And we did meet for one more Sunday, and we had a wonderful Sunday of services. And then, of course, the lockdown happened. And I certainly don't think it would have been right for us to then just continue on in disobedience of the government. So, but I would say it's a conscience issue. And what might be, I think we should be gracious to each other if we have a different conscience on this issue. that we shouldn't judge one another. I think it's that kind of issue. It's a weighing of the balance. I think that in this case, the government motive is essentially righteous. If the government was shutting us down for, just to persecute us, then we would then probably need to move in disobedience to obey God rather than man. But I think the government motive is not sinister. And I think it would be a bad witness for us as a church if we, openly, as it were, went against what the government was trying to do for the good of the nation. And therefore, I think it would be a bad witness if one would disobey God under those circumstances. So while the lockdown is in place, I feel it's right to obey that, whatever one's personal view is. When we get a bit more liberty, we'll be the first that are back, probably meeting with social distancing and taking due concern. But it's not a simple question to answer. It's a conscience issue.
Yeah. Derek, I agree entirely with what you're saying there, because the thing is, it's very clear in Romans that we're to obey those who rule over us. And as you quite rightly say, though, in the book of Acts, chapter 5, verse 29 says, but we must obey God as ruler. But at the moment, there's no real rule. It's not a command to meet together, to gather together. It's actually something which is a little bit more just open. But when it becomes sinister, as you say, that's a different story. Then we would see that many pastors would actually follow the book of Acts account of obeying God. But until then, I think it is for the good of the many, and it's not sinister. I agree entirely with that. Well said, sir.
Okay, thank you for your great programmes, teaching and encouragement. I have a question here for Derek. The Bible says that Jesus comes back to earth at his second coming with believers. Does that mean all the people throughout history who have believed in Jesus will all live together on earth in the millennium, including those alive at the time, says Jude?
What I believe, because you've got to put all the scriptures together, Jesus said in John 14 that our home is in heaven, that Jesus said that if he goes, he will prepare a place for us in his Father's house, which is heaven. And one day he will come back for us, that's the rapture, and take us to be with him in heaven. And thus we will always be with the Lord. So our home is heaven in the New Jerusalem, and that will be the home of all the saints. But it does say that we will rule and reign with Christ. And yes, all the saints who have been resurrected by this point, by the second coming, all the saints of history who have died will be resurrected at the start of the 1,000 years. And it says that we will rule and reign with Christ. So if you like, our job, and I believe that we will be occupying the spiritual places of authority in the heavenly places that have been evacuated by Satan and all his angels, that will then be locked up in the abyss for the 1,000 years. And we will occupy those places of spiritual authority. How much we will interact with the people in their natural bodies directly, I just don't know. But I believe our home will be in heaven, but our work will be on earth, basically, is my answer.
Okay.
Commuting will be no problem because, we will move at the speed of light and faster between heaven and earth. That won't be an issue.
Okay, Nick says, Derek, God bless you, brother. When someone you're talking to about the gospel believes the so-called Bible scholars who say that John's gospel was not written by John, what can I say to counter their so-called scholarly arguments? Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I don't get that at all. I think it's pretty obvious that it's John. I think that if you look at what you would need to do is read, to get information on that, if you get a Bible commentary on the Gospel of John, or like a New Testament Bible commentary that kind of covers all the books, they usually have at the start of that commentary an article that covers that issue. And almost certainly any commentary, if it's certainly evangelical, it'll say, you know, that John wrote it, and it will give the reasons. For example, the people in the early church, you know, I don't have their names to hand, but people who were right there. There was even a disciple who wrote, who actually knew John personally. And a number of those people in the 2nd century, they all attest to the fact it was John. And also the internal evidence within the gospel points to that. So I can't really go through that now, but if you actually look through the disciples and the way the writer describes himself as the one that Jesus loved, he was clearly on the inner circle of that. And the three in the inner circle were Peter, James, and John. And James, of course, was martyred early on. It clearly wasn't Peter. You know, it couldn't really be anyone else except for John. But if you really want to study it out, get a commentary and read the article at the start of that commentary.
Can I just ask you this, John? What's the significance of it not being found to not be John? I mean, what's the relevance?
Does it? No. Well, all that matters really is that it was written by an apostle.
Exactly.
And it was written, and it's clear that it was clear somebody who was very close to Jesus, and that it was written by, yeah. I mean, it couldn't be anyone else but John. But you're right. As long as it's not an argument to say, oh, it was written by someone 200 years later, something silly like that.
Yeah.
In fact, there's very early manuscripts from the Gospel of John that prove that it was written in the 1st century. So that's the only reason why it would really matter. But I think sometimes people like to, basically question everything for the sake of it,
I was saying, there's no real relevance. So what? In chapter 1 of verse 15 in the Gospel according to John, it actually says here, John testified about him as if it was a different person than the writer. I think that's the only thing that sort of might cause somebody to think, well,
that's John the Baptist. That's John the Baptist.
Okay, that's John the Baptist, right.
So that's a different John.
Okay.
Okay.
Carry on.
Great show, Howard and Leslie, and brilliant that you're joined by Derek. We're all familiar with the fact that the gospel will be preached throughout the world before the end, but less attention is given to Matthew 10:23. When you are persecuted in one place, flee to another. Truly I tell you, you will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. If it therefore stands that to supersede the return of Jesus, we should remember to broadcast and take the gospel to the land of Israel. It will be great to know your thoughts, says James.
Well, that is a controversial verse. Yes, it either simply means that on that mission trip, they won't complete all the villages before Jesus comes to them. Not talking about the end times, but simply talking about his ministry. Or you could see it that this is a reference, a prophetic reference, that in the tribulation the gospel will be preached to the nations, but also especially to Israel, because the Bible does say by the end of the tribulation all Israel will be saved. So yes, fair enough. It's encouragement to preach the gospel through all the cities of Israel. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know about this one, Derek. Mary says, do you think that man will find a vaccine for the coronavirus?
Probably, yeah. I mean, no vaccine is perfect, but the key is that you need a vaccine if you get a certain number of people in the population, they call it herd immunity. If you get a certain number of people vaccinated, it all depends on the virus. So as long as the vaccine is good enough, and I don't see any reason why they've come up with vaccines for a lot of other things, they're putting enormous resources into finding a vaccine for this. So I'm quite confident that they will come up with a vaccine, that this particular problem will not entirely go away necessarily, but the pandemic will go away. I do not believe this is the final thing, And so I'm pretty confident there'll be a vaccine. It needs to be good enough so that you've got enough herd immunity that if enough people in the population are immune, then the thing is going to kind of naturally die out, or at least just become like a lot of other things that people can die of, but not be the danger that it is right now. I'm pretty confident because everyone is going for this vaccine. This virus has affected the whole world in the way that previous viruses have not. It seems to have a strange combination. It's not the most aggressive one by any means, but there's just a combination in the way that it kills a certain number of people, and it spreads in quite a clever way, and that seems to have made it different to other viruses that. The whole world is motivated to find this vaccine, so I'm pretty confident they'll find it within about a year, something like that.
Okay, well, I think you've probably answered this one. Martha says, good evening. Could COVID actually be the beast, as it has many crowns?
It is interesting. It's got this crown symbolism to it, and I use that myself in my one of my messages, that you know, it's crown, and it wants to have dominion over you, and our only safety is to submit to the crown of Jesus, and then its dominion has no power over us if we trust ourselves under God. But no, you know, that's just a superficial likeness. The beast in the Bible is very clearly the political power, and ultimately all that political power will be concentrated in one person called the Antichrist. So it's not the beast. No.
Okay, Derek, we've got 5 minutes left. I've got another 52 questions for you, okay?
Right,
Louisa says, the mark of the beast, is that not offered halfway through the 7 years of tribulation?
Correct.
Okay, there you go.
So we're not there yet.
Stop coughing.
Sorry.
I'm only joking. I don't want to lose you, Derek.
So GOG and MAGG, please ask Derek if there is any relation between the GOG and MAGG of Ezekiel 38 and Revelation 20.
Well, there might be some kind of connection because they're the same phrase, but they're clearly, if you look at the description of the two wars, they're two different wars. One takes place before the second coming, but the GOG-Magog war in Revelation 20 happens after the 1,000 years. There's lots of reasons why they are different. It is a bit of a mystery as to why they're both called GOG and MAGOG. But I have written a book about this. Sorry about this flagrant advertising.
Good. Keep doing it. Yeah.
The imminent invasion of Israel is all about the Ezekiel 38 invasion. And I believe it's important because this could happen anytime soon. I think it's very interesting that Israel is planning to annex, possibly in July, the West Bank. And this is a prophecy about these nations invading the West Bank, because it says the mountains of Israel, which is the West Bank. So I believe that that could be the trigger event for that big invasion. And out of that invasion, God will intervene himself. And it won't be Israel, it will be God himself. And that will cause a great revival to happen in the nations. And personally, I'm looking for that revival to happen before the rapture as a kind of final soul harvest before the rapture takes place. So I'm very much looking out for the Ezekiel 38 invasion. But the other one in Revelation is after the 1,000 years.
Would you say it's significant that Russia is almost on the doorstep in Syria?
Exactly. Russia, Iran, Turkey, they're the three main players. And, you know, all the pieces are in position. And with Russia's economic, dependence on oil, and with, what's happened with oil and gas prices.
I could sell you a couple of barrels for 50 quid each.
Exactly. So this is the kind of conditions where you to kind of survive even, you start a war and you try and get control of, it's just, there's, you know, the whole situation is getting in place for that to happen.
Okay, I've got one here. We are told that when we are in heaven, we'll be incapable of sinning. I find this so difficult to imagine. How could this be done? Have you got any thoughts on it, Derek? Says Maggie.
Well, it's true that once we, in this life, the key issue of this life is our free will. And in this life, we make our choice as to whether we choose God or reject God. And when we leave our bodies, even at death, there's a sin nature in our bodies that causes us constant temptation to sin. But if we've accepted Christ, our spirit's born again and is perfect. And once we're free from our body, then we will actually be made perfect. When we're resurrected, we will be sealed into a perfect, glorified state. Praise God. It's like the angels. When they sinned, they were either sealed into a sinful state or they were sealed into a eternally righteous state. It's hard for us to imagine because we have never experienced that ourselves. But praise God, by God's grace, because we have made the choice, that's what we want. We want to belong to God, and that gives him the right to transform us into that perfected state.
Okay. Howard?
Yeah, no, we're almost run out of time, Derek. Absolutely brilliant that we've had you this evening to answer all these questions and many more. It's been such a privilege, Pastor Derek.
Thank you.
You know, one of the things, the very last chapter in the Bible, and that is chapter 22, of Revelation. It says, outside are the dogs and the sorcerers, the immoral persons and the murderers and the idolaters and everyone who loves and practices lying. Whereas blessed are those who wash their robes so that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter through its gates into this new city, in this new heaven, new earth. I just want to say to everyone else out there, thank you for being part of Revelation TV's World in Focus tonight. And thank you, and to my wife as well, for being with me. And please say a big hello to Hillary. And thank you so much, Pastor Derek.
Thank you, Howard.
God bless you.
Bless you.
Bless,
Thank you so much. God bless you, Leslie. Bye.
Thanks. Okay, well, Howard, I got through quite a lot of the emails this evening, but so sorry if I didn't get to yours. Just too many for the space that we had. Howard?
Now is the time for Revelation.
Stand by. 5,